So I'm here with Sheila from This Throat. So thanks, Sheila, very much for joining us on the show today.
No bother, delighted to be here.
So I suppose just to kind of get the ball rolling, could you just start by introducing yourself and kind of giving us an introduction to your music and I suppose your history with music as well?
Yeah, sure. I used to perform under a different name, She, and I released an album back in the late 2000s with Fergal Lawler from the Cranberries producing. But when it came around to this project, I hadn't released any my own music in a while. So I decided, as it was quite different, I'd just make it a whole new thing with a different name. And it's basically just me. The EP I've released is vocals and piano, and I also play the harp, which I'll be using hopefully on the next one. And I'm a classically trained musician, harpist and pianist, and that's kind of where I came from. And I teach music as well, so I guess the music is kind of informed by that a bit.
Okay, and I suppose for those who haven't heard it, we just played one of your songs, but for those who haven't heard it, could you kind of give an introduction as to what your music is all about? I suppose under This Throat, at least.
Um, the word I've been using is grim. I suppose all of this was composed during lockdown, which was not a particularly happy time for anyone, I think.
No, no.
Um, and I had a baby at the very beginning of lockdown, so that was quite challenging. And then working through kind of the breakdown of a relationship, so it's very confessional,
Okay.
and very much about feelings and that kind of thing, and
So,
sad.
so like, would you kind of say then that you were kind of, because you've been in the industry for a good few years at this point. So were you kind of I suppose motivated by those kind of circumstances to kind of start this new project, if that makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I hadn't written or gigged in quite a few years, and I think even though lockdown wasn't great, it did give us all time to kind of stop and pause and think and write. And, the few years running up to that, life had gotten very busy and I was involved in a lot of different non music things. And finally, I think just had a chance to kind of, yeah, to sit and write in a way that I hadn't in years. And that's probably how this managed to come about. I think if life had gone on as normal, I probably would have put it on the long finger again and again and done nothing.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of a weird positive thing about the whole COVID thing.
Okay. And so was there any kind of you know, for at least as far as your new music goes, was there any kind of particular artists or anything like that you kind of looked at for inspiration?
I think I take a lot of inspiration. I think at this point, I was listening to a lot of stuff I listened to when I was younger, kind of as a
Mm.
teenager and stuff. I think you tend to do that when you get a bit emotional.
Yeah, yeah.
So I suppose Tori Amos, Annie DeFranco, Fiona Apple, that kind of thing that I would have come up on. And I'm also kind of influenced a lot by classical music. Been listening to an awful lot of Bach, and yeah, and I suppose newer music. I I got really into Phoebe Bridgers, I think, as loads
Okay.
of us did, and a lot of that Lucy Dacus, Julian Baker, and that kind of stuff I was listening to a fair bit. So I suppose they all rolled into one. But at the end of the day, it's such a personal project that I think a lot of it just kind of came out from
Yeah.
me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's perfect. So, you know, when you decided to kind of release this new EP, was there any kind of challenges that kind of came about? I know obviously probably COVID was probably one um in terms of the logistics of the whole thing, but was there any kind of when it comes to kind of getting back out on the music scene, if you will, Was there any kind of challenges or anything that kind of got in the way of doing that?
Well, I suppose a big one is before I would have always written songs and gigged them and gigged them for quite a while, played them live, made adjustments, and even before going into studio, then you would have kind of tested them out on audiences and figured out what worked and what didn't. But we went straight into studio, and I actually haven't played these songs live yet. Um, I have some gigs coming up now, but it's kind of a backwards way for me
Yeah.
to approach things. So that'll be interesting. And then, of course, there's just being out of it for so long. Um, you know, a lot of my old contacts don't work in music anymore, or people don't remember who you are, and it's back there hustling and social media and emailing everybody and trying to get some interest. Um, so that's a challenge, but I think it's a challenge for every self-releasing artist.
Yeah, so and kind of sticking with that, um, do obviously because when you released music before, that was kind of in the kind of late 2000s, as you mentioned, and so obviously a lot has changed since then with social media and things like that. So, was it difficult to kind of adjust to maybe the new way of kind of promoting music and stuff like that? Was it difficult to kind of, I suppose, adjust to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're a long way from MySpace, which is kind of what we would have. So yeah, it's learning about those kind of things. Streaming services. I had to kind of educate myself on getting distribution and how you get your music on, Spotify and Apple Music and all that. It's kind of a whole new world for me. And also, I mean, there's a lot less of a focus now on, I guess, traditional media. Maybe what you
Yeah,
call the big radio stations and your big music publications. There's so many interesting blogs and smaller stations and independent shows and podcasts that it takes an awful lot of research to figure out where your music might fit and who to send it to. um, but it's really interesting as well because actually people have put my songs on a few shows and playlists, and then as I look at that, I go through all the other music on the same show, and I'm discovering lots of new Irish artists and stuff, which is cool. So that's a real upside of it.
okay. And so do you think that obviously you have discovered a lot of other kind of Irish artists and stuff uh through kind of social media and the like, but do you think it's competitive at all trying to kind of put yourself out there, especially after so long, when there are others that have kind of released music more recently? Do you think that's a difficult thing to kind of adjust to?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think at this particular moment in time, I think sure everybody started writing in lockdown and
Yeah.
everybody came out of lockdown with a project, and loads of people are self-releasing stuff, and there's so many awesome gigs happening, which is great, but it can be hard then to find a space for yourself. But I've been really lucky in that. I don't know, is it just that the music is maybe a bit different to other stuff, but I've had like some really, really positive reactions and some interest that I didn't expect at all, because in a way it was really a thing I did for myself. I didn't kind of expect it to go anywhere, because it's such a personal project.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it is a very competitive market out there, but I'm really pleased with how it's going so far.
So, kind of sticking then with kind of promoting the music, if you will, the kind of process behind that. Do you, I suppose, was it difficult to kind of do that? I know we kind of talked about the challenges of social media and stuff like that, but and how things have kind of changed. But do you find it, was it difficult to kind of reach out to radio stations or kind of blogs and stuff, as you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about your knowledge really, and I didn't have the knowledge, but I still have a lot of friends in the music industry.
Yeah.
Um, so I was just tapping up people for, you know, who should I email? How should I go about it? How do I do this? How do I get distribution? So it was basically just accosting all my friends and begging them for, some little lessons in how to do things. So that does help, you know, if you've people who are doing it. Like my friend who produced the record, Don Sims, is a producer for Post Punk Pod and the Techno Hippies. He's involved in that project. So they've been, you know, self-releasing a lot of music. So
Yeah.
he was able to give me a lot of tips and stuff.
Okay, so you know, you did have, I suppose, some kind of help in that sense, and you know, in terms of the actual kind of creative process, um, you know, was it difficult? You know, because you mentioned a lot of this was written and stuff during lockdown. Was it difficult? You know, when you kind of set out this project for yourself, was it difficult to kind of keep motivated?
Um, no, actually, I think the easy part for me is the writing of the songs. Because I can just do that at home, you know, in the middle of the night on my piano, which is kind of how it
Yeah.
ended up being. And then as I write, I take really rough like videos of songs and send them to friends that I, you know, who've known me for a long time and known my music, and whose opinion I really value. So I would take a rough video and send it to them, and then, you know, they would be encouraging, and then that would drive me on to finish the song and do another one. Um, and yeah, it actually happened quite easily. It just kind of, I call it sometimes song vomiting, just like vomiting songs
Yeah.
left, right, and center. So, and then the studio time was just really lucky, that Don knew the lads who have Dry Lane Studios in Limerick, and they were going to be away for a weekend and said that we could use their studio, and there was a piano there, and it all kind of fell into place very quickly and seamlessly, actually.
So yeah, okay. So it all kind of came together then, and you know, you released the EP and stuff. And so I suppose, how kind of pleased have you been with the response to the music?
Oh, like absolutely delighted, because I genuinely thought that it would go nowhere. I put it on Bandcamp, and you know, 10 of my friends would listen to it, and I pat myself on the back and move on with my day. But the response has been, uh, yeah, just more than I ever would have expected. Because I have sent it around to people, but I can't say I made a full time job out of it, or
Okay.
made an absolutely, like, I didn't make a huge effort or spend hours and hours. Um, and I think, yeah, I really did it for me instead of for anyone else. And I think when you do that, um, anyone paying attention to it is surprising, because you're so inward about it. You're like, oh, this is my little thing that no one else is going to care about. Um, but there have been a few stations now and a few reactions and interviews, and people have just been really, really nice about it. Um, and it's just really heartening, you know, and it really drives you on to think, oh, I'll do another one, and maybe, you know, do some gigs and make something of this. So yeah, it's been great.
Okay, that's fantastic. So kind of moving then onto the future. You know, you mentioned you have a few gigs planned. So could you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm starting in Limerick. I don't live in Limerick anymore, but I lived there for a long time, and it's kind of home. So I'm glad that my first gig of testing out these songs live is going to be in Limerick. So we're the Record Room in the Commercial on the
Yeah.
20th of November,
Okay.
Sunday the 20th, and then Plug Records in Cork on the 3rd of December. And we're just in the process of booking Dublin. We're hoping it's going to be the week after that. I think the 11th of December, but that's not confirmed yet. But it'll be all up on my social media and stuff as soon as it is.
All right, that's perfect. And in terms of the actual kind of music itself, have you made any plans yet for another EP or an album or anything like that?
Yeah, I have another EP pretty much written. So going to get these gigs done and maybe test out some of the new songs, and hopefully in the new year get into the studio and get a second EP down. And they'll, I think, style and mood wise, they'll be sort of a pair, is the idea, and then see where it goes from there. And who knows, maybe a full length album maybe something totally different. But definitely the second EP is pretty much written, so hopefully that'll be out in the new year.
Okay, so that's fantastic. And so yeah, we're nearly out of time, but just before we finish up, if we want to find you online, where's the best place to do so?
I have Instagram is this throat, and Twitter this throat sings, and I have a website as well, it's thisthroat.com, and all of the links to social media and information about the gigs and everything is there.
Okay, so fantastic. So again, this has been Sheila from This Throat. Thanks a million, Sheila, again for coming on and being the first interview of this show of the year. I really appreciate
Oh, I didn't realize that.
it. So
That's
yeah,
great. What
thanks
an
a
honor.
million.
Thanks a
Right.
million.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.